after 12 years of toil in my own kind of business, but now I work for Daylesford. I have 20 acres of land, plus another 5 acres if I want it, access to great machinery. But the reality of Daylesford is that if we can grow it, let's give it a go, because we've got a great market, and so we grow a very wide range of salads, main crop veg, herbs, salad plants, plant sales, but we're also doing cut flowers now as well, which has added a whole new remit, because I've been completely trying to avoid vegetables going to flower for years, but now I can actually sell bolted Florence fennel, bolted chard. It's actually quite a useful cut flower at the right time of year. So diverse crops and having to supply crops all year round means you have a very diverse selection of weeds, and we have them all. We do have them all. And thus we use the whole arsenal to attack the crops. Hammers, thank you Jonathan for that. Mechanical, flame. Sometimes we're good at the flame, sometimes why the hell am I bothering with the flame? But generally it's quite effective. It's all about timing, as Lynn's pointed out. Mulches, be them municipal waste mulch, plastic mulches. We tend to use the Mypex mulch time and time again with pre-burnt hulls rather than the single-use plastic mulches. And the last resort is by hand. I no guilt in suggesting that we might weed by hand. My best tools are some very good, well-fitting gloves that are machine washable, so you don't end up having hands smelling like ham the whole of your life. And knee pads, modern gel knee pads with excellent Velcros. They will see you good into your 65th year, gentlemen and ladies who are going to commit to horticulture. There is nothing wrong with hand weeding, and it is inevitable in the crop sequence of events, planting, watering, mechanical weeding, we will end up hand roguing. Roguing is a lovely name for it, I guess. How does this work? There we go. Crop contours. Crop contours is what we're trying to aim for. Clear visibility of different crops, parsnips, cavolo, fennel, red kale. That beautiful ability just to see the crops without them being interfered by patches of green, of the fat hen creeping up in there, or in a low crop, lots of white flowering stellaria. The fancy name for, well, it's the Michelin star name for chickweed. Ian Toller's mantras of weed early before you can see the weeds, and don't let them seed. That's all very well, Tolly. I rarely get there. My seed burden doesn't burden me, and I don't want you to be burdened by your seed burden. I think that can overwhelm you. And the reality is, have I failed or have I not failed? That's what I'm tending to think, because you get to mid-September, when the brakes are off, you can let it go, it starts to rain again. The weeds aren't actually competing, and if you haven't actually got a spare bit of ground that's empty at mid-September, you either put it down to green manure, or in our case, we'll put it down to fast-growing salad brassicas like mustards and mizunas and rocket. But if you do have grass and chickweed and speedwell coming up in your leeks and your celeriac and beetroot, that's actually a good thing. That's green manure. That is looking after the soil. That is preventing the need for an extra fungal, microbial, mycorrhizal damaging cultivation to get in extra green manure seeds. So you suddenly realise that when you have leeks with weeds in mid-November, that's actually okay. They've done all their growing. They don't actually look that impressive like that, but when you stand back, you can just see blue. You've got to, when you're taking your crop contour photograph, you've got to lift your camera up a bit. But when you pull up a leek in between November and March, you actually disrupt the soil quite a lot, so you need quite a few weeds there to stabilise the soil and look after it. And I'm always amazed how you always find worms at the base of leek plants in this kind of situation. It's very, very heartening that you're looking after all that soil life. But yeah, generally the systems are that we, in the field, we have a 4-row system. We will drill crops that are either very fast growing like the brassicas, where you don't necessarily worry about pre-emergence treatments, or we will kind of use a flame treatment on things like coriander, carrots, beetroot, spinach beet. And then we'll go in later on, like I said, to do hand roguing with Swiss oscillating head hose, or if need be, by hand. But this slide gives you a good idea. We've got an acre of polytunnels on site, and this is a good example of integrated mulching scenario. The slower growing crops on the right, where you've got lettuce and flat parsley, that's down to the pre-burn mypex. Next to it, there's a couple of drills of coriander, which have been flame weeded, and then in these two, actually this is a terrible example of single-use plastic. I actually keep these and shove them in a big box with the intention of using them again. But it's two pieces of plastic that I've cut to be about 40 centimetres wide with climbing beans. But in between them on either side, we've got radish, mustard frills, rocket. The intention is that you use this very valuable tunnel space to kind of capitalise on quick crops in the spring, and then you rotivate in the salad crops, or after you've harvested them, obviously, and then that leaves a relatively clean space for the runner beans to cast their shade and suppress any potential weeds. But it's more about, this slide's about demonstrating an integrated approach. Yes, that's what it is. And here's a very poor slide on a sunny day of, again, on this whole side of the tunnel, this was flame weeded. We've got Claytonia on the left. Claytonia you can't really put through a plastic mulch in the winter, because Claytonia, it just gets sucked by slugs. The slugs love Claytonia. So you have to, prior to planting Claytonia, you will let the weeds come up, burn them all off, then delicately plant without disturbing the soil Claytonia into those specific lines. And that means you don't get any weeds, but you also don't have any slugs in that area. Then we've got, this is anemones, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently they're very valuable. I've never grown them before, but they've grown quite well. Again, they're like corms or bulbs. You have a good 2-week period for them to grow before you flame over the top of them, and then you don't damage them. And then coriander there. You always flame, you get a good kind of, well, this is probably sown late September, so it's about 7 days before the coriander emerges, so you kind of flame it after day 5 or something like that. And then you have somebody going through, this is probably, I don't know, 3 weeks after sowing, and they're doing wheel hoeing in the tunnels. That's the only problem with tunnels. You have to do everything by hand. There's a little flame weeder wand. It's fun, isn't it? another happy peasant. Apprentice with a wheel hoe. Accurately using it, very sharp wheel hoe. Sharp hoe, oh, there you go. There's an inevitability to a market gardening business that as you develop, you realise that some crops your system just doesn't suit. And carrots, I don't need carrots in my life, you know. I know there's a lot of great organic machine owners in East Anglia who can grow carrots. I like to grow very fast growing things, like mixed leaf salad. Isn't that a beautiful slide, ladies and gentlemen? Very clean sward of frills, mustard, rocket and mizuna in a polytunnel. But if you look closely, you will see the chickweed and the pig amaranth and the speedwell just lurking behind. But we will basically be able to grow things like this, get a couple of cuts off them before the weeds take over. So growing crops that don't actually need weeding, that's a good option, especially since this is a very quick turnaround kind of crop that makes money quite quickly. Well, what am I looking at now? Finished, but effective rotation. So the rotation thing, well, that's don't worry about that slide. I'm going to talk about rotation now. Rotations allow you to create little opportunities of intervention where you can get on top of perennial weeds. And we have this amazing machine called a Quick Up, which kind of scoops the soil, and then has lots of bars at the back of it that flick all the soil and everything that's growing on it into the air. So the soil comes down first, and then on top of it comes the couch and the rhizomes of the creeping thistle. We have perennial sow thistle as well as the normal creeping thistle, and that allows it to dry out on the surface. So intervention for these perennial weeds in your rotation is great thing about having lots of different crops and rotation, because you know that even though the creeping thistle is bad in that crop this year, next year you'll be able to get in there in mid-July and after the early potatoes, and you'll run the quick up or the rotavator through bastard fallow and really knock these perennials back. But it's about using as many different approaches as possible. This is a crop of strawberries planted through MyPex, and then in between we've actually got municipal mulch, which is on top of tulip bulbs. This is great because it's winter work, and obviously a lot of weeding happens between mid-May and mid-September. So any kind of preparatory weeding or weed suppression you can do, i.e. laying plastic and planting perennials, or putting municipal waste on top of the plastic. I particularly like this system actually of cutting strips every other pathway in the strawberries, because this you have this curtain of plastic you can roll back to cover over the ground if you so need that extra suppression. More municipal waste compost. That's an interesting slide. Well done, Jez. And there's various kits, poorly photographed. There's the back of the Quick Up. There's the front of the Quick Up. Rotavator. I know it's a bad thing, but it's also a really good thing. As part of my effort to stop the weeds from going to seed, we have big rotavators and small rotavators. The handheld Howard Gem is possibly the most valuable tool in my kit after the knee pads. I'm just going to finish on a lovely crop contour of brassicas, because the great thing about brassicas, they suppress everything very effectively and cheer the soul when you're feeling overwhelmed by weeds in other parts of the field. So just to remind you, crop contours, ladies and gentlemen, expect a range of tea towels with these type of photos on, coming from Daylesford in a few years.